Hola, mi amor. Are you ready to wake some people up today?
Always, because too many experts out there are still invisible. And that ends now.
This is the Inspire Authority podcast, where we teach coaches, creators, and entrepreneurs how to build unstoppable brands through writing, storytelling, and media.
I'm RJ Stewart Inspire, author, business coach, and creative strategist.
And I'm Noelle Ayana, digital creator, brand strategist, and yes, sometimes I call him mi amor.
Together, we're giving you the truth. No fluff, no filters. Because talent is nothing without visibility, and visibility is nothing without authority.
So buckle up, amor. It's time to turn your message into power and your story into profit.
Your love is a flame I surrender to.
Here's something that might surprise you. In a world where we're bombarded with over 5,000 marketing messages per day, our brains only remember about 1% of them. But you know what we do remember? Stories that make us feel something.
That's such a fascinating statistic, and it really highlights how our brains are wired for narrative, not just raw information. I've been thinking a lot about how this applies to building authority in today's digital landscape.
Well, you know what's really interesting about that? The whole concept of authority is being completely transformed. It used to be all about credentials and fancy titles, but now we're seeing something entirely different emerge.
What do you mean by different? How has that shift actually played out in practice?
So here's the thing. Studies show that content with personal stories gets up to 22 times more engagement than purely factual posts. It's like we're moving from what I call the expertise economy to the authenticity economy.
You know what's really striking about that? It reminds me of how TED Talks that include personal stories get an average of 34% more views than those that don't. There's clearly something powerful happening here.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how this connects to neuroscience. When we hear a story, our brains release oxytocin, the same chemical that helps us bond with other people. It's literally changing our brain chemistry,
That's exactly why this whole approach of using your story as a strategy is so powerful. It's not just marketing, it's biology.
right? And here's where it gets really interesting. Research shows that when we're presented with facts and figures alone, only two areas of our brain activate. But when we hear a story, seven areas light up like a Christmas tree.
Well, that certainly explains why some of the most successful business leaders today are also master storytellers. Think about how Sarah Blakely always talks about cutting the feet out of her pantyhose. That story has become legendary.
And you know what's really powerful about that example? It's not just a cute origin story. It demonstrates problem solving, innovation, and relatability all at once. It's what I call the triple threat of strategic storytelling.
So, how do you actually translate your personal experiences into something that builds real authority? Because there's clearly a difference between just sharing random anecdotes and doing this strategically.
Well, research from Stanford's business school shows that stories are up to 22 times more memorable than facts alone. But here's the key: they found that the most effective stories follow what they call the transformation arc.
That makes me think about how some of the most powerful brand stories aren't actually about success, they're about struggle and transformation.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. Studies show that sharing vulnerabilities actually increases perceived leadership capability by up to 45%. It's completely counterintuitive to what most of us were taught about professional communication.
You know what fascinates me about that? It's almost like we're coming full circle back to the ancient tradition of apprenticeship, where wisdom was passed down through shared experience rather than formal instruction.
Um, that's such a brilliant observation. And it ties into something really interesting from anthropology. Storytelling has been the primary method of knowledge transfer in every known human culture. We're basically hardwired for it.
Well, that certainly explains why some of the most successful online courses have completion rates up to 85% higher when they incorporate personal storytelling elements.
And here's something really fascinating about that. When stories are used in business presentations, retention rates jump from 5% to nearly 65%. But there's a catch: the story has to be both authentic and relevant.
That reminds me of the whole know, like, trust factor in marketing. Except now we're seeing that trust isn't built through perfection, it's built through progression.
Right. And the data backs this up. Studies show that audiences are actually 63% more likely to remember information when it's delivered through a story that shows growth or transformation rather than just success.
So it's really about finding that sweet spot between vulnerability and expertise, isn't it?
Exactly. And here's what's really interesting about that sweet spot. Research from Harvard Business Review shows that leaders who share personal stories are perceived as 40% more influential and 30% more authentic than those who don't.
Well, that completely flips the traditional idea of authority on its head, doesn't it? It's not about being untouchable anymore, it's about being relatable.